I think the most bizarre thing before I start this video is that I actually came prepared for one. We all know that tennis is a very open sport to beginners, intermediates, professionals. Back in 1978, the USTA involved a rating system that could help us differentiate people between whether or not they were beginners or whether or not they were on the professional level with something called the NTRP scale. The NTRP, the National Tennis Rating Program, 1.5 meaning beginners, 7.0 for professional level players. Now, this was a way for people to kind of interact and to see where people were on a holistic scale for playing with different people from different areas in the United States or maybe around the world. But this was primarily a USTA rating system that would help people divide into different playing levels throughout the country. According to the USTA website, the ratings are generated by play in USTA adult divisions of 18 plus, 40 plus, 55 plus, and so on and so forth. Which is funny because when I was a junior, when we talked about ratings, there wasn't really a rating. The only rating that you would say is if you were a good junior, you would be above a maybe 4.0, 5.0 type of level. If you were on the bigger scale when you were going to play Division I college, be around that 6.0 level. But you wouldn't really hear about that skill level if you were high-level junior player. It would be for those that would play USTA events once they aged out of the junior level tournaments. Now, why am I telling you this? The whole premise of this video is to talk about the ITA World Tennis Number, and that's a new number system that is going to give clarity and to help people play against other people that are around the same skill level, as well as creating a community that brings together tennis players of all levels. Why does this sound so familiar? Because there's already something like that. The NTRP scale is divided by threefold. It's calculated by computer rated, by mixed exclusive players that rate themselves, or you can self-rate yourself without going through a whole certification online survey to tell the USTA what you play like, which is fine. What's weird about it is that you can appeal the process whether or not to be a higher or lower rated player, because this scale is not determined by yourself. A beginner can't say, oh, I'm good enough that I consider myself a 4.0 player. That makes no sense, because then when they go play a 4.0 match, they're going to get their ass kicked. It's computer generated in the fact that you go through this entire survey and you go through this and then you can appeal it instead of going through something like a universal tennis rating where it tracks your matches and it's more accurately depicted based on who you've played and how many matches you. And for me, this NTRP scale, I wouldn't say is out of date, but it's a way for people to rate themselves as an adult in the US. That's just how I grew up with it, and this is my own opinion, because when I grew up in Italy, I never heard of NTRP. I never heard of the way of rating yourself like this. The only way I rated myself against other juniors was through tennis recruiting. Were you a 3-star? Were you a 2-star? Were you a 4-star? Like the high-level kids that I always wanted to aspire to were those 4 or 5 blue-chip level players that I really wanted to get up to, but I never eventually did. But it was a way that, for me, seemed very old school. And that brings me into the other tennis rating system that we're going to talk about, which is Universal Tennis Rating. We all know UTR by this point. I've played many UTR events. I have my own UTR rating. I think it's a brilliant idea. I'm going to read you the description of how their tagline for their product and for their organization, because I want you to understand each tagline and tell me what you think at the end of this video. It's one global platform for everything tennis, connecting players, coaches, clubs, and federations. And that rating scale goes from 0.0 to are now top professionals like Rafael Nadal or Novak Djokovic, who have the highest UTR ratings, which is about a 16.05 or 16 plus. For me, if you're a decent player who plays competitively, you're always going to be around that 7-ish level. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know what a competitive UTR rating is down in the comments below. Would love to hear your thoughts. But they provide events, paid hits, tournaments, and they're integrated within the college system. So now tennis recruiting is using UTR to define how good their players are and how they match up against others maybe around the world that are playing professional ITF tournaments. In my opinion, UTR is the ultimate way that people are rating themselves now. Maybe not for the older generation, but for my generation, for mid-20s teenagers and 30 to maybe 45-year-olds. This is just my opinion. They have cornered the tennis market in defining how you find competitive people based on your rating. Now, what I love about UTR is that it's very inclusive and it's a very competitive way, and they've been doing a lot of cool stuff with tournaments. Their PTT, the Professional Tennis Tour, that they've been doing 25K purses with, allowing them to compete at the highest level for prize money as well. These prize money tournaments, these ITA tournaments that they're doing with college tennis players and people that, like myself, that still want to compete against players at a high level. But the downfall of this, and I've asked many coaches whether they teach juniors or professional level players, when you develop a junior player based off of UTR, the fact that UTR is now determining who they practice with and who they play against is hindering their ability to do something like that. Kids these days will not play with other players that are a lower UTR. But in my opinion, and it seems like a very popular opinion amongst coaches, is that UTR is flawed in that sense because players won't ever get to play players that are a lower rating because they don't train with them. And the only way to best their rating is to play people that are a higher UTR level than them. But that's not necessarily how it works, right? The whole point of a UTR system is to help you play against people on different scales. And that number doesn't determine how you play. It just determines your results, how frequently you play, the sets that you've played against certain people. Because if you're constantly playing people above you and then you're wondering why you lost to a guy that's a 1.5 lower than you in terms of a UTR scale, and you're going, why is this happening? I'm this high of a UTR. Because that's not how tennis works. You obsess about a number that is controlling the way you train instead of actually practicing practice sets against other people and learning from your experiences in those practices, playing against people of a variety of games, and understanding your game on a complete and holistic level. And I think parents, we're starting to see it with parents too, and we're starting to see it affect the way people go into training and playing to either prepare for the professional level or to play in college. Now, with these two rating systems in mind, we're going to throw a wrench into this fucking gear, because now the ITF, the International Tennis Federation, is developing, and it's still very new, but it also is something that's being adopted by the USTA, by the LTA, and by Tennis Canada now, obviously the ITF because they invented it, a world tennis number. It's like we're trying to reinvent the wheel. It's like we're really trying to reinvent something that works with UTR, because that was the first, and it's a very efficient way of understanding people's games. And now this seems to be the rival, which doesn't make any sense, because if we're going to grow the game, we don't need a rival to develop better players. We don't need to put more money into something that we could put towards something else in terms of publicity and training, and especially in tennis, media that helps promote the sport and grow the sport. Let's just make more people confused. This is and let me know if this sounds familiar, but the World Tennis Number, and this is straight from their website, is a real-time skill level rating where you can track your tennis progress based on your actual performance. I feel like I'm hearing an echo at this point because it sounds exactly like another rating system that we already have in place. And it also has a scale, like NTRP does, as UTR does. The scale goes from 40 to 1. Why? Why is it so big?
That's what she said.
Beginners start around 40. That's their scale, right? Which makes sense. And pro players will be closer to 1. So instead of it being a 1, it'd be like a 0.4. Maybe I'm just overthinking this, and maybe there's a simpler way, but that makes no fucking sense. And the way that you can find people around the same skill level using this ITF World Tennis Number is through their game zone. And their game zone will help you find opponents that are evenly matched to you. And with the scale that they have on their website, the game zone is a small sliver of this circle that helps you find people that are around that same ITF World Tennis Number rating. They've already partnered with the USTA, the French Federation, the LTA, the Lawn Tennis Association, Tennis Ireland, Singapore Tennis Association, and they recently just launched in Tennis Canada. Again, I'm going to go back to the statement of why we're reinventing the wheel for determining people's ratings. Why are we trying to go back to something that has already been invented? And while this is something that is like any business, and from the business mindset, for every business that pops up, there seems to be always a rival or something similar to it. And whether or not it works, it does. If it doesn't, that's just survival of the fittest, right? And the initial business that we have here is the universal tennis rating. Why are we trying to build something that's gonna, in my opinion, going to make parents and tennis players more confused on the junior level? Why do we need 3 different numbers? Why do we need even 2 numbers? I would be happy of just keeping UTR the official way of, and this, take it with a grain of salt, UTR is a way to determine that rating, but it's a simpler version of understanding where someone's game is. Right? So, why would all these organizations implement different rating systems? And if they're going to teach it to their players, why do they have to teach another rating system when they've been working? So imagine a junior player walks into their coach's office and they see this and they explain to them and they start getting a better ITF World Tennis Number than their friends, and then have the same UTR number as their friends. So they have a better ITF World Tennis Number, UTR numbers the same as their friends, and he starts bragging it to his friends. Their friends talk about it to their parents. Their parents then go to the coaches and ask about their number. Oh, how can we improve this? Well, we don't really know because it's still in the early stages of development, even though it's getting passed out to all these great organizations. But what about if ITF literally starts becoming the new UTR? How is the ITF going to develop ITF World Tennis Number specific tournaments and not get confused with ITF Pro Circuit events or ITF Junior events like J1s, J4s, things within that nature? How is that not going to be confusing? For me, and I think the whole premise of this video for me to be making is, one, to get your reaction to this whole idea of having another rating system for tennis players, and to have the idea of, will this even benefit tennis players in the long run? Are we going to see a competition between having ITF World Tennis Numbers and UTR ratings? Because that's where I see this going, and it's going to be which one's going to be implemented in more higher level events and programs for people, because we already have a professional tennis tour for UTR that doesn't involve ITF, ATP points, WTA points. It doesn't involve all of that. It's just a way for higher level players to compete that still want to compete for a prize, but without the hassle of constantly traveling just to make a certain amount of money and to maybe even break even for their travel. So for me, this is concerning. This is concerning to me on just a learning scale and for just an understanding of junior development. Because now that I'm getting into coaching, I'm now starting to worry about things like this, because I don't want kids getting confused and caught up in these numbers and ratings that seem to be the forefront for every person to be a part of. So as much as I do like having a rating system like UTR, because that's if I was to rate it right now, UTR, NTRP, even though I still don't fucking understand it, then this ITF World Tennis number, I still don't want junior players to get super confused by this, because this is something that, in my opinion, we don't need. We don't need another system like this. I don't know how it's going to work. I would love to talk to someone about this. If someone from the ITF is watching this, please let me know how this is going to work. Would love to figure it out. But overall, I'm still very confused by this. And I don't know if this is going to work. Let me know what you guys think of these rating systems, because there's a lot of them, and at least now, and there's a lot of confusion between them as well. So I'd love to hear your opinions. Please leave a comment down below of what you think these rating systems will benefit or hinder. We'd love to have you guys join the channel as well. We're trying to hit 3,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so we'd love to hear your opinion about all of this. So make sure to leave a comment down below, leave a like, and consider subscribing to the channel. And I hope you guys enjoy your day, and I'll see you guys soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks, guys.